How is everybody doing? I hope you're all well. In this video I'm going to take a look at the first 3 studio albums from American singer-songwriter Tori Amos. Tori Amos is a great artist. She's a great songwriter, good singer, and a fantastic keyboard player. Yeah, I think she's a little underrated, but it's a long story. This is my relationship with Tori. Her debut, Little Earthquakes, was released in early 1992, although it says 1991 on the back. I remember seeing it advertised on the back of Q magazine in early 92, and I got a copy of the CD and I was instantly drawn in. And they were saying she was the new Kate Bush, all that kind of thing. Now, she does sound a little bit like Kate Bush, but she's not as wacky as Kate Bush. You know, sometimes Kate Bush can become a little bit manic and a bit off the wall and a bit surreal. Amos never really goes down that path, you know, but she's not imitating Kate Bush, so don't never ever listen to people when they say that. Kate Bush is completely unique. Well, anyway, the first album, I bought that and it was, you know, spinning merrily in 1992, 1993. I really enjoyed it. This one is from 2015. It's the half-speed mastered edition, which I only bought recently. I always wanted it on vinyl, but to cut a long story short, I kind of bought all her stuff on CD, obviously, until around 2002. I think that was Scarlet's Walk. I have them all on compact disc still. And then I didn't like that album, and I just found that, you know, there was other things to be listening to, and I think after a decade I kind of just grew out. I got tired of listening to her, and then I didn't, you know, anything that came out after that. I think The Beekeeper, I bought that and it was wrapped up in, it was wrapped in the shrink wrap for at least 10 years, and I sold it on. I didn't even listen to it, so I have no interest in her music. I just found it, yeah, it's quite demanding, you know. It's not stuff you put on in the background, you have to listen to it. But the debut it's fantastic, you know. It really is a good album. There is something that came out before that, I think from 1988 or something, called Why Can't Tori Read. That was kind of a heavy metal hard rock album, but it's not a Tori Amos album, but I think that was the name of the band or something like that. But it does exist. Atlantic actually brought it out, as far as I know. She was signed to Atlantic. But this album is really good, and like I said, now I've had this on CD for, Christ, 30 years, and this is the half-speed mastered version, and I think it sounds fine. It's really nice. It's cut by Miles Showell. He seems to be cutting everything, and the sleeve notes as well here. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I was only, what, 23 when I first saw Tori. She was rather attractive, you know, kind of the girl next door. Let's check out the track listing. The album kicks off with Crucify, and that's a great track. Really good. Girl, that's not bad either. I'd say as well, there's a kind of little bit of a Joni Mitchell, maybe Carole King thing going on some of the tracks. Silent All These Years, that's a good track. Precious Things, that's really, really good. That's actually one of the best tracks on the album. It builds up with with drums and stuff like that, and percussion and stuff. Live, that sounds fantastic. Winter, that's another slow one. And then Happy Phantom, that's kind of like, it's almost like something out of a musical, you know. It's quite jaunty and funny. 2, China, slow ballad. Leather, that's a funny song. It kind of reminds me of something off Transformer by Lou Reed. Yeah, the songs now are, you know, about religion, sex, relationships. Yeah, and then Mother. They're all personal songs. Tear in Your Hand. These, you know, I think this album is a little bit too long. I'll be totally honest. Like, it just kind of seems to, it drags a little. I will say that. Then Me and a Gun. That's a cappella. It's about a rape. It's actually quite disturbing, but it's kind of black comedy in some ways. The lyric is quite good on that. And then Little Earthquakes itself. So yeah, some of the piano intros and stuff like that, and the synthesizers, the arrangements, it almost reminds me of Bruce Hornsby, some of the tracks. Album number 2, this was called Under the Pink. This came out in early 1994. I actually remember buying this on CD because I think the same day I was after buying a brand new Pioneer CD player, and it was quite a good one, you know. I think it cost me something like £350, which was a lot back then. Again, these were kind of elusive back then, the vinyl, but I remember that there was a pink version of this came out years ago, but I always wanted to track it down. But like I said, I lost interest in her music in the last 20 years. But I found this second hand, and it was like half the price that you'd pay in the shops, and it's in mint condition. Again, it's a 2015 half speed. So I grabbed it. So I thought, you know what, yeah, you know, it's a good album. But I always found on CD it sounded absolutely horrible. It was very harsh, hard to listen to. You know, it was like, what was that album by Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill? It would cut the ears right off you. It was just like a horrible production. And yeah, so this one, it's a bit harder than the first one. You know, there's kind of loops and stuff in it. It's a kind of a different direction, but it's not like the first one's quite warm and quite inviting, and it's quite intimate. This is a bit more brash, you know, and again you have the sleeve notes in this one. Just goes through each song and stuff. Nice disc on this. It's just a red label. It looks really cool. The album kicks off with a very quiet song, Pretty Good Year. Very somber. Again, that could have been on the first one, really. God, I really like this. That's a good one. It's kind of, there's almost kind of a, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's almost like a Beck loop, you know, the way it kind of crashes on. And there's another bizarre one, Bells for Her. That's just kind of almost like a kind of a prepared piano. It sounds very kind of dissonant and stuff. Yeah, it's just atmospheric. Past the Mission, that's a great track. Again, when I hear this, just the music on its own, you know, in the background, I always feel it's almost like a Bruce Hornsby track. You know, there's great piano playing is fantastic. Baker, it's another slow track, and then The Wrong Band. That's a kind of a waltz. It reminds me of what's that song by Kate Bush, On the Dreaming? Suspended in Gaffa or something like that. I can't remember. It reminds me of that. And then The Waitress in side 1. Cornflake Girl. That was another single as far as I know. Reminds you something of a western. You know, you've got the kind of the whistle. It reminds me of Ennio Morricone. And then Icicle, Cloud on My Tongue. Space Dog, again, that kind of is a kind of an electronic beat in the background or something. It just sounds like a loop. That's a good track. And then Yes, Anastasia. That's a long track with strings and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm listening to this. This sounds good. You know, the cut is good. I like it, and it's far nicer than the compact disc. But I haven't really listened to this album for a long time. You know, I'd say, like I said, I kind of lost interest, and yeah, I'm kind of investigating it again, and it's good stuff. You know, album number 3. This was released in early 1996, and this is where the story gets a little bit surreal for me. In the summer of 1995, Tori bought a big old Georgian house in County Cork, actually not far from where I live myself, and it was like, yeah, you know, you hear of people passing through and stuff like that, and you know, this person bought this and this person, and oh, Bono has a house over there, and Rory Gallagher used to live over there, and all this kind of stuff. But one day, July '95, sure as hell, I was working in a little place, a little print works, and whatever look I gave, I went out to the door and I looked down the street, and less than 100 feet away, there she was standing by a wall, by the back of a shop. And I was kind of like, my mouth was just got wide open. I thought, holy fuck, like, you know, it's Tori Amos. So I didn't know what to do, you know, what was I supposed to do? You know, it was like, you didn't expect to see somebody that's music you've been listening to for 3 years. It's just absolutely bizarre, you know. And eventually, I mean, she must have thought it was some fucking weirdo staring at her. You know, I remember, I'll never forget, she was wearing a pair of combats, kind of a vest, and there with a bag, just waiting by the wall. It was a sunny day, and then a van came along, and she climbed in, and that was it. It was just, yeah, just bizarre. And I rang friends and said, hey, guess who I saw? And yeah, so she lived in Kinsale, County Cork, but she wasn't around all the time, but you would see her the odd time. And then, like I said, she bought the house, and while she was recording this album, some of it was recorded in that house, some was recorded up in County Wicklow, and there was some obviously recorded in, I think, in the US. But yeah, it's absolutely, you know, bizarre, you know what I mean? And so anyway, now this LP I bought back in, it must have been 2003 or 4, I can't remember, but I just bought it because I saw it in a second-hand record shop, and I'm glad I did, because it's the European pressing, and there was only one at the time. I think there was one for US and one for Europe, and it's clear vinyl, you know, so that's a nice item to have, you know. It's really cool. But anyway, to cut a long story short, getting back to this. My mother was working in a local hotel, and this was around the winter of '95. And here, she met her, and she said, "Oh, my son is obsessed with your music and stuff like that." And she goes, "Oh, that's nice to hear, you know." So anyway, I could have killed my mother. And she says, "Well, I give him an autograph, or can I get an autograph for him and stuff?" So anyway, this is what she wrote. This is what Tori wrote. She said, "For Alan, all the white horses are still in bed." And there was a bit of a smile. And then, with love, Tori Amos. And then, to ride on, okay? Now, the glass is cracked here. This was before Christmas '95, okay? So, this album was being recorded then, Boys for Pele. And then, if you look at the very first lyric, I got me some horses to ride on, and that's written here. So that was a hint. So, you know, when you hear the album, then it's, so yeah, so that was kind of cool. It was kind of a you know, cryptic message. This I made myself then, you know. I wanted to keep the autograph, but I knew I'd lose it, so I got a frame, and I actually got the 3 compact discs, you know, when this came out in, I don't know, was it February '96. I had the 3 on CD at that stage, so then I photocopied the cover small, and I put them into a frame and all that. So yeah, this is cool. It's an autograph, you know. And but I did become friends with our housekeeper, or you know, this guy who was running errands and doing all the stuff. He was minding the house, and there was lots of parties and stuff out there. I was out in the house loads of times. Had some great memories of the place. I remember being out there in '98, and there was actually awards on the walls for the first 2 albums, the Deutsche Schallenplatte, whatever that is, you know, WEA in Germany for I don't know, for selling so many units, and the first two are on the wall, the platinum discs, you know. And I think he told me that they were stolen. I'm not sure. Now, I didn't steal them. If I did, I'd be showing them in a video here. Yeah, so that's fascinating. You know what I mean? It was just like coincidence. The house is sold now. She sold the house a few years back, unfortunately. So there's no more ties. But in the credits, recorded at a church in Delgany, County Wicklow, and at a wonderfully damp Georgian house in County Cork, Ireland. That's the house. I think it's Ballywilliam House, I think was the original title for the house. But yeah, so there you go. That's my claim to fame. This album is different from the first two in that it's quite sparse. A lot of the songs are just piano and vocal, and there's a harpsichord as well, which she made fine use of. In concert, she'd have the piano on one side, the harpsichord on the other side. So, you know, it's quite somber, you know, Horses, Blood Roses, that's kind of almost like a grunge track played on a harpsichord. And Father Lucifer, Professional Widow, I think that's supposed to be about Courtney Love, I'm not sure. But there was a remix done of that, and it's horrible. It's one of those Euro house, or whatever the hell, it's horrible. That was massive, it was a huge hit. And I think during that time there was a bunch of Italians came to the town, and they drove up to the house and knocked on the door. They found the house, imagine that, like, yeah, and they said to Vincent, the guy, the butler, we hate that song, you know, tell Tori we're very disappointed because we're big fans. Like, she had a huge cult following, you know, and people are, you know, obsessed with her, you know what I mean. But the Professional Widow was eventually released on the actual, some CD copies of the album, would you believe that, you know? I mean, it's horrible. And then Mr. Zebra, Marianne, Caught a Light Sneeze, that was a single, yeah, that's a song with drums and stuff and bass in it. Muhammad, My Friend, and Hey Jupiter. Yeah, the songs are quite slow. I haven't listened to this album now for a long time, and I'd be lying if I said I did. So yeah, I must go back and reinvestigate it. See then, Way Down, it's kind of gospel. The bass player on that, I think, is George Porter Jr., I think. Little Amsterdam, Tallulah, Not the Red Baron. Yeah, it's an album that, you know, you kind of digest, you know, it all in one take. It's a bit much, you know. I always found that I can't listen to the whole thing in one go. Agent Orange, Donut Song, In the Springtime of His Voodoo, Putting the Damage On, Twinkle, yeah, so it's a long sprawling beast. That's it, yeah, really. I'm kind of reinvestigating, you know. I there was a time when I just couldn't listen to it, you know. Maybe I listened too much back then. You know, that happens sometimes. You go overboard with an artist, and then all of a sudden you can't listen anymore. It's funny. I find it difficult to listen to stuff from the 90s. Radiohead. Kind of started listening to Oasis there recently, but I find it hard to listen to 90s stuff. I don't know what it is. Like, it's just that there's very few 90s albums that I absolutely can't live without, you know. Whereas from other decades, there's been, you know, like I said, stuff that's indispensable, you know, that I would listen to from time to time or very regularly. But I find the 90s for some reason, yeah, and the proof is in the pudding. I've sold the Benz I had by Radiohead. I had an original copy, and I sold that vinyl. And I had Kid A, and I got rid of that as well. But yeah, I find that it's stuff you go off very quickly. I don't know what it is about it, you know. I don't know. Anyway, so that's my claim to fame. That's Tori. I remember in '96 I was having coffee one day as well, and she was across the street, and of course a friend of mine was there. Oh, I'm going out, and he ran off out, and he was talking nonsense. But I stayed there, you know. And so I would absolutely confess I've never met her face to face. I always said to myself, yeah, just say hello, and you know, I like your music and all that kind of stuff, you know. That's but back then I was a bit of a chatterbox, and I wouldn't be able to stop. I'd say, oh, that song, and blah 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 blah, jabberjaw going, you know. Yeah, you know. And like Vincent he's really funny. He's an artist, a brilliant artist as well, and he's a bit eccentric. We had a party in the house, Christmas a few years back, and He made us all watch The Wizard of Oz, and we were going, oh no, I want to go home, blah blah blah. He put it on at midnight, but actually it was brilliant. We all watched it, and The Wizard of Oz is actually a fantastic movie. So there you go. So, you know, or sometimes our own preconceptions of things are, you know, a bit skewed and stuff like that. I think you should immerse yourself in something before you make judgment, and that's what I'm doing with these 3 albums at the moment. I'm just going to go back and enjoy them for what they are. And Tori is a great artist, and certainly worth investigating. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe, and take care.